We are here on the San Fernando Hill, and I'm joined by Mr. Oral Saunders, the UPO, United Public Officers leader and hopeful candidate to lead the PSA forward 2018 and beyond. There have been some developments lately within the PSA, and I don't think anyone saw this coming, you know, but I know in life expect the unexpected. So Mr. Saunders, as always, it's a pleasure having you.
Thanks a million.
Let's take it back a few days.
Sure.
And the matter that was brought before the court.
Yes.
That has now put a spoke in the wheel, if you want to call it that, of the electoral process. But there are those who might be saying, listen, maybe this is this spoke will actually reveal some things that need to be revealed. So just tell us, for those who are not aware, what exactly is happening right now?
Well, as you rightfully said, last Friday, the elections committee and more so the elections officer, they were served with court documents. In fact, it was an ex parte injunction, my information is, and they were asked to report to the court at 2 p.m. on Friday last. And what we recognize is that one of the teams that were going up in the elections decided to challenge the election committee and the elections officer in terms of the process, and even the instance of certain names that they had a query in terms of, are they really members of the PSA? Because those persons, namely from the Airports Authority, they were paying $50 membership dues, as opposed to the rest of the public service that were paying $100. So those are the type of issues that the fixers would have approached the court, and the court convened, and Justice Frank C. Prasad would have heard the matter, and he believed that there were enough questions raised to stop the elections.
Let me ask a question about the fixers in particular.
Sure.
Prior to the injunction, were there any sort of information circulating within the PSA that they were going to make such a move?
No, not officially, but I knew in my conversations with their leader, he had always raised issues in terms of the listing. Now, let me just back up a bit for the general public to understand where the fixers came from. The fixers were part of a team called Team Phoenix, and when the unification talks began with them, they were actually the last team that I approached to join with the United Public Officers, because back then we were called the United Protectors of the Public Service. And when those discussions actually began, we decided to say, so to speak, that we would go together. We wanted to get that out of the way. And we decided to make sure we fill the post of president, first and second vice presidents. And when that was done, members of that Team Phoenix who believed they had a right to those positions, when they did not get those positions, they stormed out and decided to call themselves fixers and have their own political vehicle to approach the elections. Now, it was always our hope that this election would have been a one-on-one situation, United Public Officers versus Watson Duke. Because when I looked at the statistics of the 2013 election, there were more persons voting against Mr. Duke than persons who would have voted for him. And when I looked at what was being said, the ideology, the thinking behind those parties, they were basically saying the same things. So why can't we all unite? And that is really where the genesis of this unity platform began. And I would have hoped that, seeing that everyone was saying at the time, we want Watson Duke out, we want him out, we think we can do better, then I would have thought the unity platform would have been the ideal platform to bring about that change.
Is it too late for, and I guess this is based upon the window that you'll have been given right now to where the elections are concerned, is it too late right now for the United Public Officers and fixers to come together, or that ship has sailed?
I think that ship has sailed.
Why?
Because for all intents and purposes of the rules, the election rules,
that's what I mean. Okay.
Yes, the election rules have closed off nominations, and persons' names have already been in the newspapers.
But moving forward, let's say, you know, based on the victorious party involved,
yes,
do you see where it can happen? What's the relationship between yourself? You said you all spoke, yes, but what is the relationship between yourself and the leader of fixers?
Well, that relationship, to be quite honest, has become suspended. I mean, it's a political environment that we have found ourselves in. However, I would say that our purpose of not just uniting the leaders, our purpose is to principally unite the entire public service, because there's a disconnect. There are persons from WASA, and you may be aware that the PSA has the recognized majority union status for monthly paid workers at WASA. There's a disconnect between the WASA worker and the public service. There's a distrust between Tobago and Trinidad. And what we are seeing is that a union, our primary responsibility is to build solidarity, and solidarity is bringing persons together to create that union. And we believe that for the past 8 years that has not occurred, and it is really our desire to bring persons together. So in spite of this electoral process, it is still my dream of bringing the entire public service, including fixers, including even Sentinel, because at the end of the day, I think the union will only be stronger if we are united, and we are not in a position to fight the employer if we are not united. So we need to unite even after this election going forward, and we just simply said as the United Public Officers, why wait until the end of our electoral process? Why not begin that unification exercise right now? And that is what we would have been engaged in.
The same list that the fixers had an issue with, did you have an issue with the list as well? Did you also have concerns, or were his concerns valid?
I think there were some valid concerns that they have raised, to be quite honest. It's just that we went about it in a different way. What we chose to do is to get a copy of the PSA members listing as of the 27th of November 2016. We have that in our possession. We just never made it public. So we were looking to see if after the elections, if there were any grave discrepancies, then we would have been able to have a platform to approach the courts as opposed to doing it before the elections. Because at the end of the day, Sheldon, our membership, based on our campaign, all they wanted was to vote out Watson Duke. What this action has simply done, we already had, so to speak, Mr. Duke in the departure lounge, you know. He had already received his boarding ticket. It was just for him to board the plane and leave the PSA. But by the actions of fixers, they have given him a temporary reprieve. They have delayed the flight. So what we are saying is that at the end of the day,
you're saying these issues could have been dealt with internally first.
I have always, the PSA is celebrating 79 years as an organization. And there are processes within the electoral process where if any of these issues were of concern to any one of the parties, they could have brought it to the attention of the elections officer and have it addressed. They could have called for a special general council meeting. All of these things could have taken place when the actual vote was taken to include these 250 plus names on the listing. Persons could have raised an objection then and there, but they chose not to, because I believe their confidence were in the kind of campaign they were doing. They were doing a very media-friendly campaign. We, on the other hand, never left that to chance. We didn't only depend on the media. We did the old-fashioned campaign of visiting all the areas, all the sections, all the ministries, and actually having meetings with them. And we were on a roll. We were on a wave of popularity. Imagine we had several meetings in Wassa. We had several meetings in Tobago. We had several teams set up all over the country, and we were getting a positive review. So we were adamant, and we were positive, confident that going into the election, despite there being one or two anomalies, we believe to motivate the mass membership of the PSA was the only strategic way to approach the election.
You're using some very key words there. Are you saying you're not confident anymore?
No, I am simply saying no, on the contrary. I'm simply saying that at present, today, we do not have an election date.
Right.
And it is against that backdrop I would use the past tense. As soon as we are guaranteed an election date, but I wouldn't even say as soon. What I would want to see is that we will intensify and we will continue our successful campaigning that we would have engaged in over the past couple of months. That is what I want to really communicate.
Now, we haven't spoken as yet about the other individual in question, Mr. Watson Duke, in any sort of detail. And it was said after the ruling was given to suspend the elections, of course temporarily that being, he walked out, didn't say anything.
Yes.
And they say, you know, silence is deafening. You know, what is your, and I for the last few days, as a matter of fact, we haven't really heard a lot from Mr. Watson Duke. What is your take on his silence?
Well, it hasn't really been silence, you know.
Well,
it may have escaped you. Can you believe that I would have listened to him on an interview, and actually he has said that he is thankful, words to that effect, that he's still the president of the PSA today, and that he would want the government, namely the Minister of Finance, to give every PSA member $10,000.
Oh yes, right. I'm aware of that statement. Correct.
Now, anyone who understands negotiations would know this is more theatrics, and it is consistent with how he would have left the court on Friday as well. Theatrics. He deliberately didn't speak to the media because he wanted the media to want to run him down to get a statement. This is vintage Watson Duke. But we believe that he is satisfied that he is still the president of the PSA, because as I said before, Mr. Duke did not do the type of campaign that the incumbent ought to have done if it is that incumbent was seriously looking at staying in power. We outdid him in the campaign.
Do you think he's somewhat grateful?
Of course he is. For the extra time.
Extra time.
Yes, the delay in flight. Yes, he is happy with this delay, and I think he is going to use it to his advantage. And to me, at the end of the day, this is really the main grouse of our members. They wanted to see the back of Mr. Watson Duke. And this delay, although, as I have said before, fixers were entitled to do such, I didn't agree with it, but he is the main beneficiary of this action. There's no other way to look at it. He is the main beneficiary of this action. It gives him more time to campaign, and based on his pronouncements, he is saying that he is the president of the PSA and he will continue to do certain things, despite the fact, as far as we are concerned, he does not have a mandate. And when somebody doesn't have a mandate, what they're really supposed to do is really lie low until given such. We are in uncharted territory, the PSA, because never has this happened in the 79-year history of the PSA. This is the first time our elections would have been delayed under these circumstances. So he is the main beneficiary to all of these actions.
Let's turn our attention now to Tobago.
Yes.
And you all also have been campaigning in Tobago as well.
Yes, very hard, very seriously. We have a wonderful candidate. Her name is Comrade Sister Erna Lynch Critchlow, and she's out of the Ministry of Finance. And we are very pleased and very satisfied with the candidate in herself, one, and we are also very satisfied with the type of campaign she would have done over the past couple of months.
Now, of course, you know, Mr. Watson Duke is very hopeful that Tobago would swing in his favor, particularly after his victory as now a minority leader of the THA. But there are those who are saying, you know, we don't trust you. There are those who have claimed that they don't trust him, given, of course, the two positions that he now holds.
Yes.
What is the feedback you're getting from?
Well, our persons on the ground have also raised certain concerns, and those concerns are primarily against the backdrop of why is the PSA president so persistent in trying to become a political party in the first instance, which he was successful in doing, and also pursuing a political personal agenda at the expense of the office of the PSA president. Because let's just say hypothetically, had Watson Duke won the Tobago elections, who would the PSA members who are in Tobago complain against if it is Watson was the chief secretary? Let's think about that for a moment. And we believe this is his continued attempt to politicize the office of the PSA president, and we are very much against that. And when we would have traversed Tobago, even in Trinidad as well, many persons do not agree with this direction he is taking the PSA. Remember, the PSA is part of the governance structure of Trinidad and Tobago, and we ought to be apolitical, and I could give you several instances. You can remember in 1990 when we had the attempted coup. It is public officers that continued to work and kept this country afloat during the 1818 deadlock. All the constitutional crisis that this country has ever experienced, thank God the public service continued to work. Because any day, God forbid, the public service stops working, I can tell you without any fear of contradiction, Trinidad and Tobago will stand still.
We have seen a very, well, a history, rather,
yes,
of a fall in the number of people voting, whether it be at a general level,
yes,
election, or internal parties,
yes,
different organizations. The numbers continue to fall.
Yes.
And that is mainly because people are losing faith and hope in our state institutions and the people that govern it.
Yes.
Do you think that this setback in the PSA will also greatly affect the turnout of people coming to vote.
Well, I think that was the intent, but I do not think it will be successful because persons that we would have engaged are so hell-bent on voting out the most corrupt PSA administration that we have ever had in the 79-year history of the PSA. And I say that against the backdrop that many of the organs of the PSA have fallen flat. There is no conference of delegates, and that is a statutory meeting that must be held based on our constitution at least once per year. We have not had that in more than 6 years. The accountability of the PSA, it's all over the place. There is no more male caucus, there is no more youth arm, there is no women's arm, everything. There is no representation that ought to be the hallmark of any organization. So it is really a sad situation that is occurring in the PSA at present, and something that we ought to really give certain credence to. And I believe that any delay that is taking place, at the end of the day, I think people will put the PSA, the membership that is, the future of the PSA, they will put that at the helm of their mind and understand that they must vote. Every member, you may have never voted before. This election, we consider the mother of all elections. And we are simply saying that we are determined to engage you as a PSA member and motivate you to come out and vote. Because as long as the majority of members of the PSA come out and vote, nothing could stop them. And I mean, if it is you were to look at the example of the just concluded United National Congress elections, there was a person who was going up in the elections, and because they were dissatisfied with certain issues that would have arisen, Mr. Barrett, what did he do? He chose not to engage the process because he realized in every democracy, the incumbent will always have some form of an advantage. And if it is you want to be the president of the PSA, we think you must understand you have to take the ugly parts of democracy as well. And we have, for example, another example, which is America, the greatest democracy on the earth. At least they say so. Well, yeah. At least they say so. They also have concerns about their democratic process. So who are we as the PSA not to have concerns? At the end of the day, you must believe in your message. And at the end of the day, you have to do the work. I saw other parties engaging in a flyer campaign, meaning to say, they stick some glue behind a flyer and stick it up on a post in Port of Spain and in San Fernando and think that is going to sway voters. Those times have gone. But the bigger question, as you are really asking, is this. Do members of a country, citizens, so to speak, the more persons who shy away from the electoral process, it is a level of disenchantment in the first instance, but it is like if they would have given up. And in giving up, they are realizing that there is no difference in they voting either for or against. And those are the issues that could rob a country's democracy. Persons have to understand that when I fail to engage the democratic process, I am giving power to those who may have misguided ideas in how to run my country, to run my affairs. We must never give up, because when you look at also the history of democracy, where originally many years ago persons were not even allowed to vote, our forefathers would have fought for the right to vote. And for us to turn our backs on that voting process is to turn our backs on the sacrifices that our forefathers would have done to bring us to 2017, where we can exercise our franchise, our rights. And I know persons are disenchanted with the political process, because especially with Mr. Duke, where you see a president of the PSA, which is supposed to be apolitical, engaging in partisan politics, opening his own political party, pursuing his own political agenda. That also frustrates persons, and they decide, what's the difference? They're dressed the same as politicians, we speak the same as politicians, we drive the same kind of cars as politicians. Where is the spirit of 1939, 1938, when the trade union movement was actually formed? You know, persons didn't think about big salaries and three-piece suits, and that wasn't that. The issues at the time was inequality, injustices, power on the streets, marching for what is right. That is the hallmark, that is the origins of the trade union movement. And I think we have shied away from that, because persons really do use the union foundation to launch their political careers, and that is sad.
All right, so at this time we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to deal with some of the issues that are facing the public servants, and touch a little bit more on what exactly happened in the court right here on Cloud.Nine on ACT and The Voice.
The devil's the accuser of the brethren. And he hates marriage because marriage is the image of God. He hates marriage because it's the most sacred institution on earth. God created marriage in Genesis chapter 1. It is the first institution he ever created, and it's the foundation for every other institution on earth. And he's a strategist. He understands if he can destroy marriage, he can destroy all of society.
And welcome back to Cloud.Nine. Yes, we're on the San Fernando Hill, and we need some fresh air right now to blow through the PSA. That too much of smoke. Yes, it's like in the landfill smokes. People vision clouded. Yeah, so we need some fresh air. So we need that fresh air in the PSA in our country. So, Mr. Saunders, we are discussing this hope of fresh air.
Yes, definitely. Right, United Public Officers.
All right. The court.
Yes.
You said that there's a 3-month, I think it's a 3-month
window in the constitution of the PSA.
So what exactly was the ruling?
Well, it wasn't really a ruling. Well, it was really a more intent of starting this matter. And what the judge, the learned judge, would have done is to really try to focus on her attempts of trying to have this matter resolved within a 3-month period. Now, that is best practice, and that is the ideal. What I would say is that couldn't even come sooner enough for many public officers. However, the matter is before the courts, and we must respect it. And this matter will be coming up for hearing on the 1st of December, Friday the 1st of December. And we will watch and see. We are monitoring the situation
it's
very
possible
closely.
That the elections could take place before the end of the year, or are we looking possibly
early next year, maybe early next year, maybe. And that's best practice, as I would have said before.
One of my concerns that I've always had,
yes,
and this is not to insinuate anything in terms of the other 3 slates,
yes,
is that you've seen, and I go back to the ILP,
yes,
wherever you have a third party, and you must take into context the other parties involved who would have already have roots so deep within the political landscape.
Yes.
So it's hard to get them out. So when there's a third party, you always see, of course, where there are split votes.
Yes.
And it could,
yes,
it could sway accordingly. There have been concerns, the PSA, that you know, in the last election, that some of these slates would have, how should I say, buddy with certain elements within the PSA, and they would have, you know, deliberately formed alliances.
Yes.
Of course, for Mr. Duke to be successful. Do you have that same concern now?
Yes, I do. I mean, it never went away from our minds, collective minds, that is. And this is what I was saying before. When I looked at the statistics of the 2013 election, where more persons would have voted against Mr. Duke, he would have benefited from the old adage of divide and rule. And I mean, come on. In 2017, when we know who is the common enemy, I would have thought that the different parties would have come together, and as I said before, we were successful in getting 6 of those parties to really join with us, and I'm thankful to Almighty God for such. But divide and rule tactics, in fact, there's a school of thought that some persons are being paid to really go up against us as opposed to going up against Mr. Duke, so that he would simply stay in power. But what I would want to tell those persons is that they have taken for granted Mr. Duke's unpopularity. And because of his unpopularity, persons are simply disgusted with the theatrics, with the showmanism.
And is it to say that that's
showmanship.
Why you were basically walking on water with this election? Because even though the list may have had some quote-unquote discrepancies,
yes,
you were confident because of the voice, and something Mr. Bissess always says, the voice of the people is the voice of God.
Yes.
So you were confident that
yes,
despite whatever issues, let's not put this thing off any longer.
Exactly.
The people will speak, and no matter what, quote-unquote, the enemy, not Mr. Duke, but, you know,
the enemy, generally, yes,
forces,
yes.
No matter what they may try to do to be underhanded,
yes,
victory will be the people. The Jericho walls will fall, and
of course,
and of course, it will be the end of what people are calling for in terms of the current leadership.
Yes.
So you were confident. So that's why you didn't want any delay at all.
Exactly, because you see, at the end of the day, we did the hard work. As I said, we did the hardest job of meeting with public officers, not just handing them a flyer and telling them vote for me via the radio. What we simply did was hold meetings. We have held over 300 meetings in the past 2 months, you know. We are proud to say such. And we would have gotten the commitment, and I wouldn't want to publicly say it, but we have an election machinery that is second to none. I have not seen any one of the other teams display that level of political astuteness as what we would have demonstrated. And many of them did not even have a Tobago representative. And that speaks volumes. Are they really a national party? What were their intentions? And more importantly than that is this. If persons profess that Mr. Duke would have been doing such a miserable job, why didn't they join this united front? Because persons are only interested in power, and in other instances, we believe they are happy to have Mr. Duke stay there. It's as simple as that. Because we united, as I said, 6 groups. It wasn't easy. It was tough. A lot of negotiations had to go in. I had no guarantee that I would have been elected as the leader of that grouping. But I still recognize that the will of the people superseded even what I had as a desire for myself. And I considered myself a sacrificial lamb where that was concerned, because the members' views is what I took into consideration of us coming together as one unit. Because to rebuild the PSA is definitely going to take everyone on board. Hence the reason, if you look at our symbol, it is a combination of hands, different colors, working together to rebuild the PSA. That is our motto, it's our symbol. Unity.
You speak of sacrificial lamb, and for many years,
yes,
the public servants believe that they have been made a sacrificial lamb.
Yes, definitely.
You know, by those high-handed approach of running the PSA, as many have said.
Yes.
Again, this is not, you know, for all those entities who may be guilty of quote-unquote allegedly forming alliances so that one party may always be on top, then they know who they are.
Yes,
right?
they are. Yeah.
We're not going to call names because there were several. Like
of course, 7.
How much was the last
About
one?
7 teams.
17, and now
yes,
we have 4. So, you know, if it falls in a garden, well, you either plant it or you root it out. That's up to you, right? But the people, and I think my concern is that you hear it every day. Public servants are not happy, whether it's Mr. Duke, whether they are just not happy, period.
Yes.
One of the concerns that I've been hearing, and I don't know how best you can address this, because if you are indeed successful, that's your team.
Yes.
I made that very clear. Your team is not about you. Your team
truly
successful.
Truly.
This issue of contract work.
Yes.
This issue of people just not feeling secure.
Yes.
At all.
Yes.
Within the public service. That has been, it came up recently on a radio program, and I heard several public servants expressing that concern. They don't even know if they could hold on a job for more than 3 years or 2 years.
Very sad.
This is not a new issue.
Yes.
This is going on for at least probably more than 2 decades going on once.
Yes.
How do you plan to address that? Let's say if people are listening right now, so listen, I want to throw my support, but you know what? Quite frankly, I'm just being real with you.
Yes.
I don't trust anybody right now, including whoever.
Yes.
How would you address that issue? I mean, it's not a decision based on you alone.
Yes.
Granted, we have been very fair, but how would you approach it, basically?
Well, first and foremost, we are against contract labor unless a worker wants to perform a contract. Because the public service is so diverse. You wouldn't believe that there are some people who like contract employment.
They're flexible.
Yes, they like the flexibility of being able to go and perform a contract for 2 years, receive the gratuity payment, and they could get that lump sum to pay for a house, pay down on a house or a vehicle.
But then it's just to get the payment on time, and then that's the next issue.
Exactly, but some people when they are young, they're not given that guidance.
Right.
So they think that's a priority to them. Okay. And then of course there's the wider body of persons who they are desirous of becoming permanently employed. In fact, there are even some persons in the public service who aren't on contracts, but they are temporarily employed. Some instances in excess of 10 years, temporarily employed. The United Public Officers, we are very much against such. Like for example, the setting up of the Revenue Authority. We are against such, in essence, because we believe the protections of the public officer, where no politicians could give them a direct instruction. Once persons are not under the public service, that is stymied, and politicians can get involved in choosing persons to work in the new entity.
Right.
And what we are against as well is that the public servant or public officer, as we prefer to call them, they have consistently gotten a raw deal from governments in previous, past and present. And it is so because in many instances they are not paid at the correct salary levels. Their working conditions are less than favorable. They are not given the training that is required for them to perform at the very best. And worst of all, they are understaffed. So it is almost as if the system is geared towards making the public officer fail to perform at its best. So that when members of the public come to a government office and they recognize there are delays and the service, and I'm not making excuses because we know for a fact that there are some public officers who need to adjust their attitudes. They need to take their jobs a little bit more seriously. But we believe the vast majority of public officers are committed to Trinidad and Tobago and its development. And they ought to receive the best training. And as I said, they are supposed to be paid on time and paid at the correct salary points. Many public officers aren't. That they're being paid at the correct incremental point. But yet they still go and produce on a daily basis. Many public officers get up. Like, for example, myself, we are from South. And we leave from home probably 4 o'clock in the morning just to get into Port of Spain to park on the side of the road because we can't afford to pay parking fees. Some public officers get to work as early as 5 a.m. and they have to sleep in their car, or they go into the office and sleep by their desk simply because they want to avoid wasting gas, wasting time in traffic, just to get there so that when you, John Public, come to get your matters dealt with, that they will be there. So we are not, distracted by several governments, their focus in trying to develop special purposes companies, because at the end of the day, public servants are the backbone of our economy. When persons are placed on contract labor, let's say, God forbid, there is another national emergency, something like what would have happened in 1990. Contract workers aren't going to be coming out to work, It's public officers alone come out to work because they recognize their responsibility. They understand the oath of office to serve and to serve Trinidad and Tobago. As I said before, I know we have some work to do in that regard, in efficiency, for example.
Because they are you now will represent the new foundation.
Of course.
Providing UPO wins,
yes.
You represent a new foundation of which they now want to build or rebuild the PSA. And from every brick,
yes,
to every bag of cement,
yes,
and I'm using these analogies to really paint the picture. They are going to check. It's going to be a check and balance. How much you pay for this brick? How much you pay for? How much this work costs? They are going to look at you even more critical than
correct.
They do Mr. Watson.
Yes, and they ought to. And they ought to.
They ought to. Again, they, as you said, based yes. on what's happening, and I make it very clear based on what you, and many have been, let's be honest, many have been saying it.
Yes.
They have concerns in Mr. Watson do. They are going to look at you
yes.
critically.
And we accept such. We
right.
accept such, and we look forward to it. We have always said the hallmark of our leadership will be something I call the TAGID, which is transparency, accountability, honesty, justice, integrity, and democracy. Those are going to be our foundation hallmark words, watchwords in how we conduct our affairs. And contract labor is something we are going to be standing up against, especially with the setting up of this parallel public service without the safeguards in law, as in the Public Service Regulations and the Civil Service Act, to protect public officers, and that is really where our minds are going to be. However, we recognize that there are judgments in the courts where the government has as an employer, has the right to redesign or restructure its employees in any way it sees fit. The PSA, as a guardian of the membership and the public service, we are simply to get in there and ensure that whatever happens to our fellow public officers, they are treated fairly, and our focus will be on job security. That is our focus, to ensure that during these tough economic times, persons don't just leave their jobs because the government simply wants to bring into being a new entity at the demise of a public officer.
My last question to you before we wrap, and we're going to meet again, of course, in the next few weeks, leading up to whenever the new date will be.
Yes.
What is your relationship, and I'm saying in terms of the UPO relationship, with the other trade unions at this time?
Well, we have a very good relationship with our fraternal brothers and sisters in the various trade union movement. But I think what persons need to understand is that the PSA plays, and the public service plays, a very pivotal role in the governance structure of Trinidad and Tobago. And where other trade unions can take action based on certain issues, the PSA will retain its right to do so on an independent basis, meaning to say that we will look at every issue very critically, and we will engage our membership and our general council and our conference of delegates before we join in any form of action. But the spirit of trade unionism, the United Public Officers, we are 100% behind it, but we just don't want to pursue it where it is leading to a political end. We are apolitical. The Public Services Association and the public service is supposed to be apolitical, because we recognize we represent persons who may like the United National Congress. We know that there are persons who may like the People's National Movement, there are persons, COP and so forth, and that's their right. And then there are even a group of persons who do not like any of the parties. And
that's important, because what you've seen, even in the media, and I've said this time and time again, whereby there seem to be only blurred lines. Nobody, because media professionals have been openly declaring, their support. You're seeing the same thing even in trade unions. So now it's like, who's guarding the guard?
Correct.
Nobody knows who to trust anymore. And I think if it is you're representing the workers' best interest, it may not always be in alignment with the political party of the day.
Correct.
And I think that is somewhere where most institutions have fallen short.
Truly.
And that's why I asked the question. Because,
and the PSA is at the top of the list, because we are actually at the flip side. We do not have a leader that is patronizing the ruling party, but he has built up an adverse relationship for his own political advantage. And we are simply saying, when there is an adversarial relationship between the PSA and the government, whichever government, we are saying the members do not benefit. We want to make sure that we can earn the respect of not only the public in the first instance, but of all stakeholders, and we must be able to do so independently, bravely, because we are not practicing politics behind closed doors. We don't have a connection with either the ruling party or the opposition. We must remain apolitical. It doesn't mean to say we cannot speak to them, but what we are saying, we must not be guided by them and what their aspirations are especially when it is at the demise of the public service and the PSA. We must remain independent. We must guard that independence with all that we have, because anytime the PSA becomes a political football, we think that is the demise of the organization.
And it's always about people first and being people-centered, and I think that is where we've fallen short generally. And then, as we close, any closing remarks to the PSA membership at this time, given this delay, any sort of hope you like to give them at this time?
Of course, we would want to say to our members, we know that you were looking forward to your day at the polls. We are saying don't give up. Don't drop out of the PSA. We are almost there. We are seeing victory. We already have Mr. Duke in the departure lounge. He just has to board that flight out of the PSA. We can't do it on our own. We can do it with you and with you alone. And we are even going a step further. We are saying to you, PSA member, that even when we get your support, and we want you to come in and join the rebuilding process. Don't only come to your PSA when you are looking forward to an increase in salary, or you have a industrial relations matter. We are saying, stand up with us. Keep us on our toes. Brother Sheldon alluded to it a while ago. Do not take things for granted. Make sure that whoever you support in this election, they do just what you are paying your dues to be done. You want an organization that is progressive. You want an organization that takes your interests and your welfare at the heart. You want an organization that recognizes that representation is the hallmark of any good trade union. And most importantly, you want to depend on a leader that could unite the entire public service. We want to join with WASA. I mean, I've gotten positive reviews from our colleagues at WASA. We want to make sure that we build back that trust with Tobago. So we will bring forward a united public service that is going to be driven by education and driven by the spirit of solidarity. Don't give up. We're going to get there. We're going to win this election.
I want to thank you very much, and I'm really hoping that after the dust has settled, and the victorious entity or slate steps into that office of great responsibility, that healing begins.
Yes.
And despite whatever Mr. Watson Duke, Sentinel, Fixers, whoever they may be, and of course yourself, there needs to be a process. And this is just my take on it as well.
Yes.
A process of forgiveness.
Yes.
To forgive and be forgiven. Moving forward, whether one choose to accept or not, you do so, because that is not going to move forward. And we did this already in mediation, whereby when you say you're not forgiving someone, like you're holding it against them, and if you keep on with your hand against them, holding it, and whenever they move, they carry you, or you go with them. And I think moving forward, I'm really hoping that, I mean, their heart is in the right place. I can't speak for the others at this time, but I'm really hoping that whoever, at the end of the day, it's about the workers, about the PSA members, and about forgiving and working together. If certain parties don't choose to,
well, that's a different
story.
Yes.
But I am just encouraging yourself and all the members, all the leaders, when everything is settled, let's get to the process of healing, forgiving. You don't have to like everything somebody does, that's fine. But at least learn to love and work with each other. That's my take on it. So all the best to yourself and to the other slates. Moving forward, and of course they're going to keep us abreast of the new date. We're looking at next year,
possibly.
So and all this thing about boarding pass and flying out, I looking to depart some minutes. By coming back for sure. Right. So thank you very much again.
Thank you, my brother.
All right. This has been Cloud.Nine on ACT and The Voice. PSA elections. The drama continues.